In this video, you're going to learn how to do a scaling up analysis in AccessMod. Scaling up is about optimizing the locations of new facilities, and AccessMod can help you to do that by taking into account several suitability factors, exclusion area, and you can really construct a multifactorial model to optimize these locations. So we're going through the different data inputs that are needed for that scaling up exercise. So first we need, of course, to select the population layer, which will be used to do some statistics on the population. And then the second one is the residual population layer. This is the residual population that you obtain after having done the geographic coverage analysis that you have done previously. So it's really the population that is not covered by the current network. And it has this class population residual. So I select it. Then of course I need my merge land cover layers here. And of course I need to enter a scenario table. So I do that. We had already input some scenario in the previous analysis, so I choose one of them. They were all equal, and you can see here that it's display. So I just need to click on import content from the selected scenario table. It copies this data. I remind you that this table is editable. You can change the values, but we'll keep them as they are now for this exercise. Now the next one is the existing health facility layers. And this is so my current network, because we can use that as well. Of course, as usual, I need to indicate the unique ID field within that facility shapefile. In our case, this is the cat column. The column that specifies the name is the name column. And my field, my column that specifies the capacity of each facility in terms of the maximum number of patients that the facility can attend for, is my column capacity. So I choose it here. Now, the next one that I have to choose is a new one. It's the so-called capacity table. And if I select it here, it will fill this table here, capacity table. And let me just explain what you can find in this table. So this is an Excel table that, if you remember, you've imported for the exercises when you imported all the data. And this table contains 4 columns. The first 2 columns indicate minimum, maximum number of population within the catchment, then a label, and then a capacity of the facility. So this table tells AccessMod what type of facility is it can construct. It can locate and then construct. If you have only one type of facility that you're interested in, that you want to locate, then this table will have only one line. But in that case, we have built a kind of generic table where we have 7 different type of facility, from other facility to ultra large facility. And for each of those, the minimum maximum indicates really if we locate somewhere where we can build a facility, we then do a catchment at 2 hours, for example. And if we have in this catchment, say, 500 population, that means there's not much population in that catchment, we will construct another facility. If in that catchment we would have had 10,000 population, then that means we can build an extra large facility at this exact same location. So AccessMod will choose the type of facility depending on that. And then when he has found the type of facility, located, then the maximum capacity of that facility can also be set in that last column. And of course, you can change that, and this is really depending on the scenario and the type of facility that you want to model. So the AccessMod will really use that to locate and to build different type of facilities. So at the end, if I run it with that table, I will have probably several type of facilities that will be constructed. Now going back to my input, there are two other fields here that for the moment are empty: the existing suitability table and the existing exclusion table. Because this is the first time we do a scaling up, this is empty, but if you do it a second time, then it would have saved the information that we're going to look at now, and you will find this information saved in tables that we can reuse for additional scaling up analysis. So going to these scaling up tables, we will first look at suitability index and then an exclusion area. Suitability index, you have to actually tell AccessMod what are the most suitable locations to build your facility. Are these, for example, only locations where you have high population that is not um, caught by the current network? Is it that plus you want proximity to roads, for example, or you want to be far away from flooded area, for example? You can set up any number of suitability factor, and AccessMod will use then a multifactorial optimization procedures that you can find the details on in Appendix 7 of the user guide, and it will locate your facility. So there are several possibilities in that factor for the suitability index. The first one is the sum of population within a radius. So here, AccessMod will find candidate locations, and it can, in a given radius, it can be 5 kilometers, for example, it will look at the population that is found within this circle, and then you can say, well, those values are higher values more suitable or less suitable. In most cases, you want to have a maximum of population where you construct a facility, so it will be higher values are more suitable. And then you can give a relative factor weight. If you have several factors, if you leave the default one value, that means that all your factors will have the same weight. They will be equally important. But you can play with that and have some factors that have a different relative weight compared to the others. Now, the second choice that we have is the Euclidean distance from features. So here I can also look at the distance to objects, to vector objects that are found, for example, either in my barrier or my road shapefile or the facilities. And I could state, for example, that here I don't want to have facilities constructed at, less than 5 kilometers, for example, from another existing facility. Now, there is a special layer here called output facilities. And this is actually the dynamic layers containing the new constructed facilities. Because this scaling up analysis is an iterative process, AccessMod will locate first one facility at one location, and then it will locate a second one and a third one, etc. So if you have some suitability, for example, that is linked to existing facility, let's say, again, I don't want to have a new facility less than 5 kilometers from an existing one, AccessMod needs to take into account the new facility that is constructing. And so output facility really means that it's the new layer that contains, well, your current network plus your new facilities. And you can indicate this by specifying this special output facilities layer. Going back to the suitability index, the third possibility is instead of the Euclidean distance, is the travel time from or to features. And so he is really computing a travel time using a least cost path approach. And of course, you have to indicate if it's an isotropic or anisotropic computations from or towards facilities. And also whether higher values are more suitable or higher values are less suitable. You have the choice here. You can give a factor weight, and you can, of course, you have to select layers that contains the vector object from which or to which you're going to compute this travel time. And finally, the fourth possibility is so-called priority map. Here we've done that to really have a general way to import into AccessMod a priority map. So let's say, for example, you have used another external softwares that tells you, I don't know, equity factors among regions, or that tells you the cost to construct facility in different places in the country or in the region. And you have a raster data that informs about these priorities. Then you can import that into AccessMod as a raster layer of class priority. And then you really use that for optimizing the locations. And so, again, if you do that, you have to tell AccessMod if the values that it founds within that priority map are the higher values more suitable or less suitable. And you can give it a factor weight. And here, of course, you have to tell AccessMod which is this layer. We don't have a layer here because in the exercises we do not import a priority map, but this is possible. So going back at my factor for this exercise, we're going to add two factors to take into consideration. So the first one will be the sum of population within a radius. We use 5 kilometers. And of course, we say higher values are more suitable. And what we'll do here is that we'll give a factor weight of 2. So that means this factor will be twice as important as the next one that we're going to enter. We select the first layer here because we're really looking at the sum of population within a radius of the new facilities that AccessMod is locating. And when we're ready here, we press Add, and you see that in the suitability factors table, AccessMod added a line that contains description of my factor. And this is what will be saved in the suitability factor table, and a small Excel file that you can open, you can change, and that you can also reuse for any other analysis. Now we're going to add a second factor, which will be the Euclidean distance from features, and we're going to compute the distance to roads. So you would like to optimize the locations of our facility that are close to road. So in the direction of prioritization, we have to say here higher values are less suitable, because if you have a high distance from road, it is less suitable than having a small distance to road. So higher values are less suitable. And we give a relative weight factor of 1. So we consider that this factor is twice less important than the other one that we input on population. So all is set here. I can press Add, and you see I have a second row here that gives AccessMod all the details. And it will use these two factors together to optimize the locations of new facilities. Now I can move to my exclusion area. Exclusions are, well, those regions in which we do not want to have a new facility constructed. And you might remember that we have imported initially a shapefile called exclusion that contained just one polygon, an area where we don't want to construct. It could be areas where, again, we have wetlands, we have an airport, military zone, everything. So we choose that. And we can set here an optional buffer around this exclusion area. That could be quite handy, especially if you're using not a polygon, but using a point or a line. You can set a buffer. In our case, we put 0 because the exclusion area is what we want. We don't want to add a few kilometers as a buffer. And here we can, the default is of course to, the default should be that we keep candidate outside of this area. We don't want any candidate facility inside, but we could have chosen inside this area. This is a way if you have a specific region of your country in which you would like to have the candidates, only in that you can actually specify the first option. But we'll keep the second option, keep candidates outside this area. We press add, and you can see that now in the exclusion area table, we have a line that summarizes the parameters that we've just entered. We are ready now with the parameterization. There are still a few settings to choose in analysis settings. First option for the output layer, either we start with an empty layer or we start using the selecting existing layer. This means that the output shapefile, if we leave it like this, will contain both the current network, the existing network, plus the new facilities that AccessMod will have found. If I click on the first one, then it just means that the output layer will contain only the new facilities that AccessMod found. So we click the second one so that we'll have all facility in one single shapefile, which is quite handy. We also need here to set some factors for the type of analysis. Again, it's an anisotropic towards facility, and we choose 120 meters, so you will do the catchment and evaluate the population in it. This is quite important, and it will do that, of course, to get the number of population in each catchment, to compare it to the capacity table. Remember this table that we have here, in order to find what type of facility to construct. Finally, we have a section on computation limits. You should be aware that scaling up is it's quite complex analysis. It could take time, especially if you have a very high, large extent, high definition raster. And if you want to locate a lot of facilities, it could take really hours, even days sometimes. And so this can help you set up when the analysis stops. And you have three possibilities here. Either you tell AccessMod to stop when the percentage of the population that is covered gets to a certain percentage that you can set up here. So when it reaches this, the analysis stops. Or you can say here, well, I would like to construct 10 or 15 or 50 new facilities. That's what I want, and I want to locate them, and then you stop. So you can enter a number here. Or you can say, well, what you are finding, if you exceed a given processing time, like a day of computation, then you'll stop, so that at least I have some result that I can look at, and then I can start again from the start at another time. And you can have these three limits set all together. And the first one that is reached, then AccessMod will stop. So in this exercise, what we want to do is actually put 53 here and get to 53% of coverage. You might remember, if you've done the geographic coverage analysis, that we were roughly around 48-49% of population coverage with the current network. So now we would like to get to 53, and we don't know yet how many new facility this means, and we let AccessMod choose that. And finally, we just put a name for the analysis. I put scaling up 53 to remember that it's 53%. Now I'm all good. I have some information here on my choices. Everything is green, so I can launch the computation. Remember that scaling up is an iterative process, so you see AccessMod is analyzing a lot of different possibilities, and then is locating one after the other the new facilities. And you can spot sometimes on the output here on screen that the population coverage percentage is increasing. And it's now up to 51%. And of course, when it will reach 53%, then the analysis will stop, and AccessMod will give all the result. There are several results from this analysis. We'll have, of course, a shapefile that gives us the current network plus the new facilities. There is a new raster of the residual populations, taking into account these new facilities. And there is an Excel table. Here we have all these results here. We have an Excel table, of course, that give you, of course, some statistics associated to your new facilities. And of course, please go to the user manual, the section 5.5.7 to have a full description of this output. And if I go now under the data module, remember that you can filter the last analysis only here. And I see here all my results, some table, and the main one here is result scaling up analysis that gives you information on all your facilities, and the shapefile here, the catchment scaling up, that give you the catchment and the facility, the new facilities.